Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Reed Show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Mac and Reed Show right here on the Barroom Network. I'm Evan Mack, as always, joined by Ross Reed. You can follow us on social media. I'm at The Real Evan Mack. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. We are live on the YouTube channel of Barroom Network. Of course, follow at Barroom Network for all breaking Bears news and Bears coverage you need to get you through this season, which is almost a quarter of the way. Well, you can't even say quarters anymore because the season just gets longer every year. But you know what I mean. We're about to enter that fourth game. If you've missed any of the previous episodes, they're up on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your media. Remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. And we have a lot to get to on the show today, of course. We're talking Bears at length through the first half of the show. We'll dive into all the offensive line woes, the running game woes, what to expect from Caleb Williams in his fourth game in a Bears uniform as they host the Rams at Soldier Field. We'll talk about the coaching staff, not to mention them, of course, too. And we'll also talk about the NFL headlines and as we enter into week 4, talk at length about those trending, moving up, moving down, perhaps, shifts in the offensive rookie of the year rankings and odds. We will talk about many other things. Happy retirement to D Rose. Say our farewell to him as well. But of course, I'm welcomed as always by not the same baby oil enthusiast that Diddy is, but he's got about 500 bottles at the cellar at home until the next pandemic pops off. Ross Reed is back, folks.
Yes. Happy Thursday to everybody. Last Thursday in September. It's Libra season. Shout out to all my fellow Libras out there. And it's starting to get to a little fall season and we rolling into week 4, thank goodness.
Rolling into week 4. We're still hanging on to those 70s for dear life, though, in the sunshine. And again, we begin as we always do, talking about the Bears. And remember to chime in if you like to all our Barfly faithful in the comment section. Feel free, and you can also engage with us on social media. But to begin, we were off last week, and the Bears have dropped 2 in a row now after that Texans loss, following up with a loss to the Colts. So, of course, the first 3 games playing the very tough AFC South, obviously joking. It's mostly run by the Texans, and can't wait to play the Jaguars because they appear to be a mess as well. Dropping 2 in a row is rough as you are ready to host the Rams, get back home. Rewinding to Houston, the Bears played them close. Defense really came alive in the second half to keep it close. That was worthy of a Sunday night matchup, I feel. It just was a case of Caleb Williams perhaps, not rising to the occasion. Defense really did pick it up, as I said, but, a loss is a loss. It was still a 1-possession loss. But against the Colts, sort of a similar story. We saw Caleb throw a lot, though, this time around, over 50 times, threw a couple of interceptions, a bad fumble, sacked 4 times. They lose in a 1-possession game. They get run over by Jonathan Taylor repeatedly, who had a great game. But again, Caleb Williams progressed through the game, finding Cole Kmet, double-digit receptions. Where's he been all season? Here he is. Finally came alive. Rome Odunze went for over 100 yards in a score, the first passing touchdown of Caleb Williams' career, which was cool to see him throw to the other rookie in Rome. Cool to see them connect. The defense was pounded by the ground game. Like I said, we know Jonathan Taylor still has the juice, even as he's getting a little bit older. Anthony Richardson, not terribly impressive. I think the defense played him pretty well. it just comes back to the defense having their moments. This is a really good secondary. The pass rush might not be great, but this linebacking group, like, again, the front four is saved by the back seven. I mean, let's be real. The one thing that is also certain is that the Bears' offensive line is a big problem. And it's nearly impossible to succeed in the NFL when you can't run the football. It just takes away any sort of creativity I feel like you have. They're trying sweeps. You can point to, these teams maybe having stout run defenses. You can't really sell me on that, but they're 31st, as in the Bears, 31st out of 32 teams in the league in rushing yards. It's unacceptable. That series in the second quarter against the Colts where they had 4 straight runs to try and put it in the end zone. And on that 4th time had the option play, which was dissected by of course, all of Chicago sports radio and television and NFL. It was just laughably bad with all these offensive linemen ending up on their asses. It's evidence enough that there is a problem. And again, another poor performance by whoever was running the ball. I don't think DeAndre Swift is necessarily the guy that they signed as for the Bears. You may be looking more towards Roshan Johnson, who seems to have a little bit more success, but it's just a piss poor effort, in execution and coaching. It's all bad. Caleb was also sacked 4 times, like I mentioned. I mean, the pass pro wasn't great, but the Bears hung around in these last 2 games. So you figure a couple plays where they're able, again, that go back to the second quarter, if you could put it in the end zone instead of running it 4 times in a row, maybe it's a different ball game. But Ross talked a lot about the offensive line, so let's start there. As far as the offensive line is concerned, and is it fixable, I guess, going forward? What would you do?
Yeah, I mean, they're in a tough spot right now. You're not going to switch out your outside tackles, Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright. Those are arguably, at this point, your 2 best guys on the field. I think the biggest flaw that they have is at center right now with Coleman Shelton. He's been an abject disaster for me to start this season. Every other play, I see him getting pushed back and put on his ass. He really is affecting the running game. He's not helping Caleb Williams as a rookie quarterback and helping to call out the protections and helping to change the snaps cadence, which I think is a big deal. I noticed that being in Houston for that game where it was extremely loud, they were running the same snap cadence, which allowed the Texans to just fire off the football. I think Tevin Jenkins has regressed this year. And obviously we know about what's going on with Nate Davis and him being now rotated in with Matt Pryor. And you want Nate Davis to be able to be good because, when he is on, he's actually a decent offensive lineman. But I don't know if he's checked out or not. Matt Pryor is serviceable, but, problem with Matt Pryor is he's so damn big. He holds up pretty well in pass protection, but he's not agile enough to get to the second level to get this running game kick started. And I think that's a big deal. So can it get fixed? I don't know. Maybe. I think what it's going to have to come down to at this point is, offensive coordinator Shane Waldron has his hands full. And he's going to have to get in the lab with his offensive coaching staff and see how they can maneuver around what is looking like a very ugly offensive line right now, a unit that's not cohesive. In my opinion, I think it is a mistake to try and rotate guys in and out of the lineup. I think the best thing that you can do for a struggling offensive line is keep the same five guys together. They have to build some kind of continuity. Anytime you're rotating guys in and out of the lineup, that does not allow chemistry to happen. And a big part of that is what makes this offensive line go. In my opinion, also to help this offensive line and this offense in general, I think DeAndre Swift snaps have to go down well under 40% starting this week. He's just been a disaster. There has been lanes. He's missing lanes. He looks slow. He's not hitting the hole like you want to. I think the offense looks a lot better when you have Roshan Johnson and Khalil Herbert on the football field. And, it's looking a lot right now like DeAndre Swift is the worst acquisition, free agent acquisition for Ryan Poles in his young general manager career. With that said, even though we said this last week, but you get a group in the LA Rams, their first season without Hall of Famer Aaron Donald. They've got a rookie Jared Verse, but this is a team that you should theoretically hopefully keep Caleb upright and be able to fire off the football. Again, I cannot stress enough. I want to see a heavy dose of Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson this weekend. I don't really want to see a lot of DeAndre Swift. He hasn't earned the right to get those snaps right now. And I think try and getting these guys downhill. Try letting them fire out the football. None of the cute bullshit. They've got the bubble screen stuff. You talked about the speed option play that they ran at the goal line. That's just not going to work. You need to line up. You need to play smash mouth football. I think it helps that the Bears are going to be at home this weekend. One thing I noticed is you're playing 2 back-to-back road games on the road in indoor stadiums. That's a really tough spot for an offensive line that is not used to playing with each other. And you have a rookie quarterback who's not used to changing up the snap cadence and things like that. So hopefully at home, they're able to kind of get that thing going, and they need to. To me, the key in this whole thing is the offensive line and is running the football. You hit it on the head. They're 32nd in the league right now in rushing. They're 31st right now in rushing yards. They're 32nd in average at 3.7 yards per rush. But here's the crazy thing about this offense. They've ran 203 plays already for the season. That's 3rd in the NFL. So something is there. I think they're closer than a lot of people think. Something is there. They have controlled time of possession in all 3 games this season. They just need to, like you said, finish the job, finish field goals, finish with touchdowns, and all of a sudden things are going to look a lot different. So I'm not as doom and gloom as a lot of other Bears fans. I think they're a little bit closer than some people expect, and I hope this game at home can get them back on the right track.
It's very early in the season, so we're right to pick apart these problems that need to be fixed going forward in these areas of improvement. And I like that Cliff pointed out, obviously, that Caleb threw for 363 yards in his 3rd game, which is great, and we'll get to that in a moment. But the offensive line, they're all professionals, right? And injuries are going to happen. I wonder what this line would look like if Ryan Bates wasn't on IR. I think that's sorely missed player.
Yeah.
Certainly, I think Nate Davis, again, in the 2nd year with the Bears, is just maybe not the guy that the Bears signed in hopes that he would be just a bruiser and just a really solid starter on this offensive line at guard. Braxton Jones getting banged up and Darnell Wright, it's very tough for these guys, and it's no slouch. I know I said that neither, the Texans or Colts are world beaters, particular as a whole. But let's not forget that, certainly, the pass rush of the Texans is really good. They have some studs along the line, as do the Colts. So there's something to be said about that. Like you said about DeAndre Swift, I just haven't seen any sort of explosiveness, any sort of vision. The only play that we've seen him break one open was back in the preseason when he had a screen go off for, 50 yards from Caleb Williams. But we haven't seen any explosive plays from DeAndre Swift, be the guy as advertised. When you see the few touches that Roschon Johnson gets, and, Khalil Herbert is a bowling ball, and you can put him, I'd rather put him in goal line situations just for that. Is a point for them to get the nod instead of DeAndre Swift at this point. And again, back to coaching, why get cute, run between the tackles, put Kerry Blasingame in there, or put an extra offensive lineman if need be at fullback. If you're at the goal line at the 1, there's no goddamn reason you should not come away with a score if you're the Bears in that situation. So that was frustrating to see a 12-yard loss in a position like that. It was just inexcusable. You answered my question about DeAndre Swift and, if he's a bust as far as signing. I do like, again, what I saw from Roschon and Khalil Herbert. Back to Caleb, or on to Caleb Williams. That's certainly positive to see him. I don't want him throwing for 50 yards every game, but in a losing situation, play from behind situation repeatedly, he has to keep slinging it. And he certainly did. And it's the only way he's going to get better. I seen Adunze and Komet come alive was great. It's unfortunate that we have not seen Keenan Allen, although we know that he is likely going to start after missing 2 straight games come Sunday against the Rams. He's healthy. And he's that vet presence that I think that will make a difference there. As good as DeAndre Carter has stepped in, again, going back to the problems with the coaching, on one of those plays on that drive, the 4 plays where they ran it in a row in the second quarter against the Colts. DeAndre Carter's matched up against a 6'6" lineman. Like that's on coaching. What are these guys going to do? He just threw up his hands and looked at the sidelines. That's inexcusable if you're the Bears coaching staff. So, Keenan Allen, that addition, the Bears are relatively healthy. A bunch of players are questionable going into this game, but it's, obviously early going into Sunday as the vets get their rest. But I'm curious, Ross, what you expect from this passing game. I know you talked about the departure of Aaron Donald, and you look at the stats for the Rams. His defense is not the same without Aaron Donald and with a lot of departures. So I think Caleb Williams can build off the success he had last game.
He certainly can. It looks like he's found something with his rookie counterpart in Roman Dunze. Those guys looked very nice and very comfortable connecting with each other on Sunday. And I think Keenan Allen coming back to this offense helps DJ Moore the most. I was looking at his route tree the other day, and basically for the first 3 games of the season, DJ Moore has only run 3 routes. He's run go routes, and then he's run screen routes and little 3 or 4 yard dig routes. It's just not going to work. You're paying this guy $20-something million a year. You're going to have to be able to extend him and open up his route tree. But you need a guy like Keenan Allen to kind of open up that space a little bit. So I think that's what Keenan Allen brings to the table. He's going to be able to work a lot of those underneath routes and be able to draw the defense with that. You're going to allow Roman Dunze to continue to stretch the field with the big body like he can. And then DJ Moore gets a little bit more flexible in the routes that he runs as well. But it goes back to, like you said, it goes back to coaching, putting these guys in the right position to succeed. You talked about a wide receiver trying to block a defensive end at the goal line. That's not going to work. But it's all about execution too. I mean, listen, 2 plays stick out to me in the last 2 games that could have gone very differently if players just execute. I go back to that Houston game. Bears have an opportunity to win that football game on a 2-minute drive, and your top 10 pick from last year got absolutely destroyed by Danielle Hunter on a play, and Caleb Williams got blasted for a sack. That can't happen, right? And then I look at last Sunday, and again, Bears are in a position to go down the field, strike for a go-ahead touchdown, and what happens? Cole Kmet, your tight end, whiffs on a block. He's supposed to turn that guy inside where the help was from Mercedes Lewis, Latu, and Latu gets a strip sack. And if you look at the all-22 tape, if Caleb's able to get that throw off, he gets Roman Dunze streaking for a big chunk yard. So players are going to also have to execute right now. And I was happy to see today a guy like Mercedes Lewis, who's, he's a 40-year-old, he's a grown man, he's 40 years old, and he was able to publicly say, listen, we talked as an offense, we talked to the offensive coordinator saying we want to be coached. And we want to have accountability, and we want to be able to be told when we're doing something wrong. And I think this is a big gut check moment for the coaching staff and the rest of the offense to say, this is a lot of pointing fingers at each other right now and looking at each other in the mirror saying, we have got to get better as a cohesive unit. Again, it goes back to the ability to rush the football. Michael H. here hits it on the head. A rookie quarterback's best friend is a running game. Caleb Williams should never have to throw the football 52 times in a football game, especially when it's for 5 yards in average. It tells you that they're using the passing game as a running game right now. But if you get that running game going, he looks very, very comfortable off the play action with his back to the field, turning around and being able to drill a dart. That's how we saw Roman Dunze get that 40-plus yard catch. So, again, get these offensive linemen running downfield. Allow them to control the football game, let them get a good lather, let the crowd kind of motivate you, but also the fact that it's not going to be very loud in there when the offense has the football. Less DeAndre Swift, more Khalil Herbert, more Roschon Johnson, and get a little bit more creative with the routes for your wide receivers. I think the Bears can get this offensive going again, and then we can all stop panicking, hopefully.
It's exciting, just the concept of Keenan Allen coming back and this receiving core being at full strength. Also, look at another offseason signing that may just be kind of a dud. We haven't seen Gerald Everett at all, but it is nice to see Cole Kmet trending upward now at this point and build some more chemistry with Caleb Williams. Keenan Allen coming back will only add to that as far as Williams' progression. But I was curious too, Ross, as far as the coaching is concerned, I'm wondering if Matt Eberflus is the guy, and I know it's early in the season, but it just comes into question again, going back to the play calling with the last couple games losses and really eking one out in the Titans game where if if Will Levis doesn't throw that pick six, we're looking at maybe 3 straight losses here or a tie. And 2 losses, I saw a funny tweet on saying about how Hard Knocks did such a good job making Eberflus look cool with his haircut and in the sick house that it distracted us from the fact that this guy is a trash coach. And I'm not there yet, but it begs the question just based on the personnel he's surrounded him with and based on his hand in coaching and he does have a big hand and the defense has been pretty stout. But I'm wondering, and the same could certainly be said for Shane Waldron. I think it's early on to say that. But did you have any impressions on the coaching and where they should go from here?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's too early to see. It's too early to tell. We need a bigger sample size. I think we're going to know a lot more about this coaching staff come December into January, because I see a comment here already. The Bears should have hired Cliff Kingsbury. I despise Cliff Kingsbury's offense. I hate it with a passion. It's a very college style offense that usually with a bigger sample size does not look good. Jaden Daniels, we'll talk about the other games around the league in a couple minutes. Jaden Daniels looked awesome on Monday because the Bengals ran one of the worst defensive line performances, per PFF that we've seen in over a decade. They were just atrocious. That guy could have had a cup of coffee back there. He could have had 2 fingers of bourbon and chilled out before, throwing a football. So, also context matters, because when you look at Caleb Williams in a clean pocket this season, he's top 3 in the NFL right now in performance, top 3. So is that part of coaching? Is that because Brian Poles gave you some bad groceries to cook with the offensive line? Is it a combination of both? Probably. But I think we'll know a lot more about this coaching staff, especially Shane Waldron, as the season goes along. Here's what I will say about Matt Eberflus. Unacceptable for you to be burning timeouts to try and figure out if you want to run a 2-point conversion play. Those things have to be like this, ready to roll. And unacceptable for you to be burning challenges when it's clear those are wrong calls. And so he has made some in-game decisions that are very questionable in my opinion. With that said, this defense is top 5 in the league right now. So, we need to, I think as Bears fans, it's tough for us because we have been waiting for so long to see a winner. We're almost like ready to bust at the seams, but we have to see this through for at least a few more weeks. Hopefully, the Rams game, you go head off to Jacksonville against a team that probably is going to be 0-4 after this Sunday and might fire their coaching staff before they head off to London. And there's some games in November that look a little better. Hopefully this kind of rights the ship a little bit. If it doesn't, then we're all kind of pressing the panic button a little bit with this coaching staff, and we're talking about how much do we need to pay Ben Johnson for him to come in here and fix this.
Sure. You have, a Rams team that's struggling. They just lost a close one to the division rival 49ers, and the Panthers, the Jaguars, who are both pretty terrible before you face Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, which should be very good. But the Rams, before we get to that matchup too, I did want to, we kind of touched on it, but Viso Joe was talking about if we think that Poles has struck out with the coaches and the O-line personnel, I think you hit it on the head, Ross, as far as it being a bit too early. The personnel, again, with Bates perhaps getting healthier later in the season would obviously help as well. I don't think there's much help you can get at this point. An important note you said too is just to get consistency, you have to be consistent with your personnel and putting them out there, not rotating putting Nate Davis on like a snap count, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, my biggest disappointment with Ryan Poles, specifically with this offense and this offensive line, is you should have went out there knowing that you have a rookie quarterback, and you should have had a better option at center. And that's kind of, a little bit of an annoyance for me. Is I would have came in here with a better situation at center. I know Cliff mentioned Connor Williams earlier. Connor Williams has been a Pro Bowl caliber center. He was coming off a catastrophic injury, but he's playing right now, and he's playing fairly well. That was a guy that I would have taken a flyer on personally. And then the other thing with Ryan Poles is if you were going to give DeAndre Swift $24 million, we talked about this going back to the end of last year and last offseason, I would have given the extra money to get a guy like Saquon Barkley in here, because what I see in Saquon Barkley right now is I see an Eagles team that is not looking good. Their offensive line is also a mess right now, but it looks a lot better because you have an elite running back that can kind of maneuver through it. So if you were going to pay a running back, you don't do it, in my opinion, or you go all the way to the extreme and you get the right fucking running back, because DeAndre Swift is just not that guy. He's never a guy that I pay $24 million for. It's kind of like when you're in the car on the way home and you ask your mom, like, can we get McDonald's? Like, we got burgers in the house. Like, you had Roshan Johnson and Khalil Herbert in the house, but you didn't have a Saquon Barkley. So that's what I would have done, in my opinion. I think that's where he made the mistake. You didn't upgrade the center position adequately like you should have. And if you were going to pay the running back, pay the right running back, and that's where he whiffed.
Yeah, I think I agree, and it goes back to money being better spent, perhaps elsewhere as opposed to DeAndre Swift. And look at Saquon lighting up the league right now. Again, the Bears hosting the Rams. The Bears back at home finally. I think they needed it after that 2-game skid, noon game back on the lakefront. They're slightly favored against the Rams. It's a game where you talked about it. They can kind of right the ship and take advantage of a pretty poor Rams defense. At least build some confidence going forward this season. That defense is pretty soft, not what it used to be. Receiving core is banged up. We know that Cooper Kupp's not going to be out there, and Puka will also not be out there. So we're on to the third and fourth string wide receivers. So the Bears secondary should set the tone, you would think, looking more like game one. And the past 3 games, they've played well. They've just been on the field far too much. So hopefully setting that tone along with the linebacker play, hopefully you can get some pressure. Like, I'd like to see the pass rush come alive besides Montez Sweat, get creative with blitzes as far as the defensive coaching is concerned and the schemes, bring corners, linebackers, whoever to pressure Matt Stafford. And then, of course, the other key is simple, which we talked about. Also the defense has to stop Kyron Williams, who's been pretty good for the Rams thus far. But for Stafford to throw, make mistakes, the Bears offense needs to run the football and try to build some consistency and take the pressure off Caleb Williams to throw 40 plus times a game, take them out of those situations where they just are very predictable with those sort of plays. So get more creative with that. And I think that the confidence is going to come there. Old Mister doesn't get nervous, is in his 4th game now. So he's definitely seen the speed of the game. He's seen some very different defenses in the first 3 games. And now it's about, utilizing all the weapons he has around him. And hopefully the coaching staff rises to the occasion as well with Shane Waldron and company, and the Bears can put on a show and improve to 2-2 and crack past, 24 points, which they, are sort of middling in the league right now as far as scoring goes.
Yeah, and you have to have a lot of respect for this Rams team coming in this Sunday. I hope that the Bears don't lose light of the fact of that, because in my opinion, Sean McVay is probably the best coach in the NFL right now. With what he's working with and what he was able to do and pull off last week to win that game. They were down 14-0 in the first quarter yesterday, and I thought Brock Purdy was going to blow them out, and they came back and they won that game last week. So you make sure that you don't lose sight of the fact that McVay is still on that sidelines, and he's going to have this team ready to go. Matthew Stafford is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Matthew Stafford is also a former NFC North quarterback who has a lot of familiarity and comfortability playing in Soldier Field, back from his Lions days. So, I want to see the Bears also be able to kind of heat up the pass rush a little bit this week on defense. I think that's how you're going to really get to Matthew Stafford. Guys like Tutu Atwell, Demarcus Robinson, Jordan Washington, those guys are not exactly world beaters on the outside, but if you let Tutu Atwell beat you deep, he can and will. But I would like their corners to be physical with these wide receivers, jam them at the line of scrimmage, really dare the Rams to run the football with Kyron Williams, and get some pressure on Stafford and let the crowd, again, feed off of you. This is a big, big home game. We haven't had a home game in the last couple of weeks. I think the nerves should be shaken off for guys like Caleb Williams and Roman Duze being back out there. But don't take a guy like Sean McVay for granted, because he is still a very good football coach. And, again, that was on full display last week. Otherwise, yes, control the clock again, get this running game going. I think the Bears win this football game. I can't see them dropping this football game. I think the sky will be falling if we have to talk about next week another Bears loss against a inferior opponent, especially if the offense doesn't look good.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit it on the head with Sean McVay too. Just talking about him being a few years removed from a Super Bowl, and he's a damn good coach, and the offense still has tricks up their sleeve, even if they're banged up. Being healthy again is very important for the Bears. There's most of the vets are the questionable ones. Getting healthy on the offensive line is important. All of those things I mentioned, you're going to try to get some special teams plays, not just rely on Cairo Santos too much, but hopefully you can break some plays, because DeAndre Carter has been a great return man too thus far too. I'd like to see him perhaps take some for further distances than he has in the punt return game. And Tord Taylor, is he worth that 4th round pick? Let's see.
Tord Taylor was not good last week. He was not good.
Every punt I saw, it was not the coffin corner guy as advertised. So I mean that plays into, again, the Ryan Poles legacy for sure. But I agree. We'll give predictions at the end as far as that Bears Rams game will go, but we'll switch focus to the rest of the NFL right now. But you touched on Jaden Daniels. It's Bears related. This question shouldn't even be asked, Ross, but I'm curious what your take is. Are you, the new favorite for offensive rookie of the year, just coming off a show where they beat the lowly Bengals, but would you rather have Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams right now?
That would take Caleb Williams 10 times a day and 20 times on a Sunday. And that's no slight to Jaden Daniels. I think he's a nice football player. I think he's going to be very fun, but he makes me nervous with the hits that he takes. 40% of the sacks so far this season that he's taken is on him. They're his fault. And I just start to worry about when defenses really start to scheme for him and he has to move past his first read. Is he going to be able to do that? And then he's also just very slight frame. So I think I'm in agreement with everybody. It looks fun right now. Monday night was fun. But even the first 2 games of the season, there were some glimpses of what he's going to look like as you kind of pull out and zoom out and look at it. So I'll be curious to see how this goes. But it was fun. Monday night was fun. It was cool to see. And, at the end of the day, we don't have to pit these young guys against each other. Sure. If we can get 2 really good quarterbacks out of this draft, we haven't even seen Drake May yet, but that's good. That's good for the NFL. We need better quarterback play right now in the NFL. So let's hope that all these young men are able to, thrive long term. I hearken back to, a long time ago where, it was posted all this week where there were articles back in October of whatever year that was that were voting the question, would you rather have RG3 or Andrew Luck? And we obviously knew how that shook out. So practice patience. But if Jaden Daniels happens to be a good football player, that's awesome for the league. It doesn't mean that Caleb Williams is a bad football player by any means. I think that they both have an opportunity to be very good football players, and it's fun.
Be a great story for both the number 1 and number 2 overall pick to be focal points of the league going forward. Great young franchise quarterbacks when both these franchises have really struggled at that position too. The Commanders just also bad for similar but different reasons as far as their success goes. But we'll talk about the rest of the NFL. As I mentioned, Chiefs keep rolling. Main storyline, some things don't change. Josh Allen looking like the league MVP. They blew out the Jags. The Vikings and Seahawks are undefeated in the NFC. And looky here, Justin Fields leading the Steelers to an undefeated record. Helps to have that elite defense for sure. I think we can agree that we're happy for Justin Fields beating out the corpse of Russell Wilson. Obviously, it's out of Russell Wilson's control, not being healthy. But very good story for them. I mean, Dolphins and Bengals in a tailspin for different reasons. Dolphins, they don't know where to go after losing Tua to yet another concussion, and you feel for that young man and everything he puts out onto the field, and hopefully he does what's right. He's probably going to have to step away from football. I know we were talking about our fantasy football chat about that very moment, and those things go through your head. Mike McDaniel, I'm sure it goes through his head, but they're just trying to put the best quarterback out there to run a really high-powered offense to try and avoid, losing another game at this point. But yet again, those movers that we talked about, as far as the Saints kind of came back down to earth and only scored 12 against the Eagles, getting beat by a field goal there. That Steelers defense is real legit. Buccaneers stumbled and Baker Mayfield did as well. Seahawks, we talked about them. I mean, they just beat the lowly Dolphins, but we talked about them in the preseason and how they're someone to look out for. Not just, in the NFC West, but they are a force in the NFC. They got great wide receiver talent. They got good coaching around them. They really haven't taken a step back since Pete Carroll hung it up. You wonder, with the Ravens, they just got their first win, luckily beating the Cowboys. What's going on with them? And then the 49ers, injuries obviously play a huge part into it. With the Rams getting that win, I should say, against the 49ers. But, you wonder what's going on with them. Obviously, that whole situation with Christian McCaffrey is just very weird and vague, how they're hiding things about the Achilles injury, I feel like, at this point, the extent of it, thinking he was ready to go into the season. But yeah, going back to Pat Mahomes and winning against the Falcons in a close game in a hostile environment in Atlanta, it seems like despite, Travis Kelce's struggles, Pat Mahomes and this team just continues to find a way, and they're 3-0 for good reason. What other takes you got from this week 3 going into week 4, Ross?
Yeah, I think to me, you look right here in our own division. I know there was a comment earlier saying Matt Eberflus is probably the worst head coach in our division. That's probably right, because look at what the Packers are doing right now with Malik Willis. They won 2 games in a row, and he's doing everything that he can to kind of hold the fort down until Jordan Love gets back. And then, man, Kevin O'Connor, what they're doing up in Minnesota right now, Kevin O'Connor is, the Vikings just absolutely manhandle and destroy the Texans 34-7. And Sam Darnold looks like the Sam Darnold that was supposed to be there when he was drafted, very high way back when from the Jets. And Brian Flores, defensive coordinator for the Vikings, has C.J. Stroud in that offense in an absolute blender the entire game. And boy, the Vikings look real legit right now. And it's going to be – that's a very tough football team because their offense is humming right now. They're going to get Jordan Addison back. He's been banged up. And Justin Jefferson is still Justin Jefferson. But they've got a top 5 play caller in the league right now, and they on both sides of the football. And, so coaching matters. On the flip side of it, coaching cannot save the Cleveland Browns right now. Kevin Stefanski has his hands full with what is now turned into the worst contract and potentially the worst trade in NFL history. I know the Bryce Young trade is out there. That's also up there. But that Deshaun Watson situation is an absolute nightmare for the Browns. And at what point do they start losing the locker room? You got guys like Myles Garrett on that football team and Denzel Ward and some really good football players out there that are watching this guy go out there week after week and make all this money. He's got $200-something million in guaranteed money, and he stinks. And he was outplayed last week by Daniel Jones. And, at what point do they even bench Deshaun Watson and bring in Jameis Winston, or do they continue to trot him out there? That's going to be a question, I think, this week, especially if that offense continues to sputter. Outside of that, going all the way back to a week from tonight, Aaron Rodgers really did look like Aaron Rodgers again. And granted, it was against the lowly Patriots, but he looked like himself again. And then the big thing this week, I kind of hinted at it, but what's going on with that Jaguars situation? Because Trevor Lawrence, another former first overall pick, and Doug Peterson, a Super Bowl winning head coach, and you would think that this team would be a lot better than they are. But this Sunday, they now go into Houston, which is just going to be a buzzsaw of a stadium, and they're going to be pissed off after losing last week. And I really think they start 0-4. And now you're on first head coach fired watch with Doug Peterson. I think it really could happen as early as next week if they just get manhandled by a division opponent.
Yeah, Jaguars are just head-scratching team, and the Bengals again losing to the Commanders in a great finally effort from Joe Burrow. It was tough to see, and Jamar Chase played a great game, but just got outplayed at the end as a team by Jaden Daniels and company. The blonde Joe Burrow ain't it apparently, and they were just he was getting ripped apart on Twitter. Man, he said Joe Burrow 0-3 is a lesbian. 0-3 is Ellen DeGeneres or whatever you wanted to do. It just added insult to injury. The Bengals are in a tailspin, and again, a few years removed from going to that Super Bowl against the Rams. It's pretty incredible to see. But yeah, Josh Allen, just wanted to circle back to his play and throwing those 4 touchdowns and just lighting up in the first half. I mean, to the point where he could have been benched going into the fourth quarter. The Bills are for real. They've been, little brother, I feel like, to the Chiefs. So I really am curious if they can get over the hump against the rest of the conference as far as this year is concerned, because they look really well put together. I know the moving parts as far as their offensive line and the receiving core. Josh Allen is that constant, and he really is getting nods and more looks as far as MVP is concerned, as he should. And the NFC East is not great all over the place. It's really competitive. We'll see the Cowboys play the Giants tonight. Finally saw some offense from the Giants, as Malik Neighbors had a great game last weekend, and the Cowboys, man, they're sort of in a tailspin, and Jerry Jones looking like a bad owner at this point. But curious to see how that game goes. Tipping off tonight. Saints and the Falcons, big divisional game. Falcons sort of got it right, better at least as a team as a whole. I know it was a loss against the Chiefs, but now hosting the Saints, they're looking to try and even out their record, and that'll be a great game noon. We already got the Vikings playing the Packers. That's the game, one of the games of the week for sure. You talked about the way that Sam Darnold has been playing, the coaching, everything's been put together. Justin Jefferson's still that man, still the best in the league. And curious, when you got the hot hand of Malik Willis, that still Jordan Love waiting in the weeds, maybe a go for Sunday. My opinion is that he'd probably wait another week because of the way Malik Willis is playing and the way this team is playing as a whole. See what happens against the Vikings, and maybe they improve to 3-1 at home. I mean, what could you say about that? Would be incredible. This offense really humming for the Packers too. The Eagles Bucks is an interesting game. Just terrible game between Bengals and Panthers. You talked about Texans probably throttling the Jaguars. Afternoon games are pretty much slouches. Curious game. The Chargers are 2-1, and curious to see which Chargers team we get, because J.K. Dobbins is obviously, when he's healthy, been a breath of fresh air for that team and John Harbaugh. And we were talking last couple of years about Justin Herbert being that dude, maybe the next MVP of the league. What can he do as the Chargers quarterback? A win against the Chiefs would be huge for them, to try and climb the ladder. And, it's early on, but still building confidence against the reigning Super Bowl champs. And then the Ravens too, who are 1-2, coming off that, AFC championship loss. They certainly didn't think they'd be 1-2, but here you are. Derrick Henry is a great acquisition. They host this hot Bills team who just hung 47 on the Jaguars. Curious to see how they perform. And then we get another doubleheader on Monday Night Football, which is, I don't know the rationale behind the programming on that, but the Seahawks Lions game is going to be the one you tune in for, and not the Titans Dolphins. That's for sure. As like you said, Dan Campbell's got this team humming and ready to roll. I know it's early on, but the Seahawks are a big challenge. Curious to see how those teams play each other for sure.
Yeah, if you're in Miami on Monday night and you're slightly coherent, you might be able to play quarterback for either team because you might be a little bit better than I don't even know if Skylar Thompson's going to play or if they're going to have to go to Tim Boyle. I know he was hurt last week. It's Tyler Huntley would be the option if Skylar Thompson can't play. So we might get Tyler Huntley versus Will Levis, which is
not horrible.
Yeah, that's rough. We're gonna be watching Lions Seahawks for the most part in that one. game of the week is obviously the Sunday night game. That's Bills Ravens. I think that's just going to be an absolute slobber knocker. That's going to be two-time MVP Lamar Jackson against the prohibitive favorite right now for MVP and Josh Allen. That's how well he's been playing. I'd be curious to see if Justin Herbert will even be playing on Sunday. The line right now is Chiefs -7 in LA. That leads me to believe that Vegas thinks that Herbert is not going to play because that's a pretty big line. But the probably most exciting game of the week, if you're not going to be watching the Bears game, is probably Commanders and Cardinals because, again, we talked about the excitement of Jaden Daniels, and then he goes up against another guy opposite field with Kyler Murray, and that could look like a Madden game. It could just look like a video game with these two guys running around, making plays and scrambling around a little bit. Both defenses are not very good. So that could be one of those like random early game of season, 35, 31 games or something like that. I could see a lot of points in that football game. I know Cliff's talking about Packers Vikings. That to me is like take the under. That might be like a 14-17, just ugly NFC North black and blue football game. But good slate of games this week. I'm excited. The only thing I'm not excited about, we say this every single year, but injuries, of course, really hurting the product already. There are a lot of quality football players not playing. Talked about Christian McCaffrey having to fly to Germany to get his Achilles taken a look at. That's not good. That 49ers team is just completely beaten up right now. We know there are a lot of other big injuries, around the league right now. Justin Herbert, like I just talked about, can't play. We're missing Tua Tagovailoa. That's not good. The Lions lost Sam Laporta last week, which looks like he's going to be out for quite some time as well. So that's the only thing that's a little bit of a downside. You just wish that you didn't see this many injuries early on, but that's part of the game. And we have to press on a little bit. Sneaky good game too is Falcons Saints because it's going to be pretender versus contender time for both those teams. I can't get a good read on either one of those two teams, which one is good and which one's not good. So I think that's going to be an interesting football game. But I'll be in the house at Soldier Field on Sunday. So if you guys are there, I'll be there for Bears Rams. Come say hi, and we'll have a Miller Lite and hopefully see some good offense.
Atta boy. Yeah, NFC South offenses are, besides outside of the Panthers, are pretty fun to watch. So I'm curious to see what we get from that Falcons game as well. Ross, D Rose retired today, switching focus to our quick hits portion of the show.
Yep.
The Chicago kid. It was, I don't know, writing may have been on the wall for some time for him, but the career was not the way, it didn't turn out the way as we expected, but you can't take away from him being the youngest MVP ever in the league. Can't take away those great moments in the playoff runs that he had as the leader of these Bulls teams. And we're just, I feel like we're never going to see a point guard who plays above the rim like that with such power and very, you talked about it on Twitter, just the poise that he has and had on the court, just cared about beating you on the court, not talking. You go back to the funny moment of the All-Star game where they're all dancing on the East for their intros, and he's just stoic, just standing there, was terrific, and such peak D Rose. Those Adidas shoes were fire. Also, I mean, all the great D Rose moments. What can you say? The lows were obviously him getting injured in a Bulls uniform were just devastating. You go back to that Sixers series with the Bulls with the 1 seed. That's, you remember where you were when that happened. Just brutal. And the second time, remember, I was working at the Score when that happened, and we just rewound that tape repeatedly. And tough to see his career, end 15 years, but now he's focusing on his family. Curious to see what the next chapter of his life brings, and shout out to D Rose, the Chicago legend. I think, obviously we'll see his number perhaps retired in the rafters with the Bulls. And legacy is certainly cemented at the United Center and in Chicago. And in the league.
100%. South side of Chicago's own Simeon High School. He wore number 23 at high school, not because of Michael Jordan, but because of Benji Wilson, which was a great also Simeon basketball player who was unfortunately gunned down in his senior year of high school. Otherwise, that young man was going to be one of the best NBA prospects of all time. I can remember watching him at Memphis and how exciting he was. And he was on the cusp of winning that national championship, of course, with John Calipari. Then the Bulls, we remember like just miraculously got the first overall pick. And people were trying to figure out if it was a debate between him and Michael Beasley. It was never a debate. The Bulls were always going to bring Derrick Rose home or keep him home. And I was able to cross paths with Derrick a couple times, especially early on in his career. And one of the nicest, most humble guys ever. He never wanted the media spotlight. He wasn't comfortable with it. He didn't like it. He just wanted to go out there and do his job and go home with his family. But I can tell you, and we all saw it on the court, that man was an absolute killer on the court. And he wanted to rip your head off. He didn't say too many words, but he wanted to do that. And yes, it sucks that the injuries derailed his career like it did. Very much in the mold of, we remember Brandon Roy, and we remember even Grant Hill, and we remember Anthony Hardaway, and a lot of other great basketball players like himself that their bodies just betrayed them. And credit to him, he fought hard. He came back. He ended up having a very great, lucrative career. He made a ton of money. He was able to get his mental health correct, because I know that bothered him, especially getting traded from the Bulls to New York. He found love, and he's married now. He's had 2 other kids now with his wife. And I hope that the Bulls do the right thing. And, Michael Reinsdorf already said today that they will bring him home and retire his jersey number, and they can't wait to celebrate him at the United Center. I think that he should be involved in this organization in some capacity, because I think that this day and age, Derrick is a breath of fresh air compared to a lot of the athletes that we see today. He stays to himself. He mostly stays off of social media. He's a family man, and he just goes out there and he does his job. And I think a lot of guys can learn from that. I think a guy, he talked about point guards that play above the rim. A guy to me that's very similar game is a guy like John Morant. And we haven't seen John Morant in a while, because John Morant's had some injuries, but also John Morant likes to show guns on Instagram and do some, like, it's like those are the kind of things, like
all the wrong stuff off
exactly. And that's when I think of a guy like John Morant, and now you think of you're like, listen, you need a guy like Derrick Rose in your corner to say, man, we don't do that. This is not how we go about things and how we do things on a professional level. So I think whether it's with the Bulls or whether it's independently, Derrick Rose still has a lot to offer to the NBA in the game of basketball, because he is just a great guy. And I think you could tell by the outpouring today, everybody loves Derrick Rose. There isn't a person out there and former players that do not love Derrick Rose. That shows you the kind of character that he has.
Yeah, well said, Ross. And left it all on the court. PJ has grown up before our eyes. He's hooping, and he looks really good right now too. It's crazy to see that next generation. I mean, Derrick's my age, and it's the right time to step away after all his injuries, and what he has to look forward to is raising his other 2 kids and seeing PJ and being involved in his development too, as well as whatever he can do. Hang around Luol Deng and hang around Joakim Noah, reunite and do whatever he wants at this point. So it's an exciting chapter for D Rose, but he will be missed. But those highlights are here forever, man. They were incredible, and all the Stacey King calls just and with Neil Funk too at that time, prime years.
Poor Goran Dragic has to relive that dunk for the rest of his life in that Stacey King call.
Sure does. Yeah, and I know I made a joke about it earlier, but this Diddy stuff has been going on for a long time, it seems, and I'm excited for that Netflix series to come and just break it all open with 50 Cent producing. It's going to be wild whenever that comes out. Not too much else in the news right now. We're not talking politics here. Are you a Lord of the Rings fan, Ross, or the Old Man, or any of these? I haven't watched The Penguin yet.
Yeah, I have watched the first episode of The Penguin. Batman is like my jam. Colin Farrell is absolutely outstanding in it. I am watching Monsters right now, the Menendez brothers reenactment. on Netflix, right, from Ryan Murphy. Ryan Murphy has 2 shows out right now because he has an Aaron Hernandez show out right now that I have not watched either. But yeah, there's a ton of TV out right now and a ton of content out there. So I'm trying to catch up for it. I still need to finish off the Season of Industry, which is, one of the best shows on TV right now going. So yeah, there's a ton of TV out there that in the midst of the I hate when they do that. I hate when they put all the good TV stuff during like the football season and all the sports and stuff like that. And we've got baseball playoffs starting next week, which is going to be a lot of fun. And then and then we've got, as crazy as it sounds, NBA camps open this week, and they start preseason games sooner than you know it. So we're into that fall winter season. Shout out, we know Cliff is out in Florida. Anybody out there that is being impacted right now with Hurricane Helen back on especially in the Florida area, I know they're getting hit hard in Tampa and heading up to Orlando. Safety to you all, prayers to you all. Hopefully the storm moves through that area quick and gets all out there to the Atlantic and is able to blow away before it causes too much damage.
No question. Stay safe to our Floridian fan base. We are out of time. Thanks everybody for watching on YouTube. And remember, if you missed any of the show, it will be up on YouTube after this, on Spotify, iTunes for the audio only versions. Remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend or two, follow us on social media. Follow me at the Real Evan Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. The Bears win Sunday against the Rams. I'll go 26-20.
I had 27-20 Bears win against the Rams as well. I'm going to call this the Roschon Johnson game. I think he gets 2 touchdowns this Sunday. 2 touchdowns for Roschon Johnson. You probably bet that and get that like plus 1,200. It'd be a nice little payday.
Roschon Johnson with 2 tutties, says Ross. And DeAndre Swift getting paid to sit on the bench. For now, we say deuces. Thanks to everybody for tuning in and watching. Be good to each other. So long, everybody.